And I'm going to open up the meeting. My name is Laura Becker. I am the Arts Program Manager for the City of Beaverton, and I work with my lovely colleague here, Courtney. And I am just returning to this position, actually, having been gone for 2 years. I'm coming back, and grants were always something that I was really proud of, and I knew that there was a great need for. And so Courtney and I have really built that program up over the past several years. And we've made some changes to the grants program this year, given everything we've experienced in the last 2+ years. So our goal tonight is to walk you through each of those grant programs. And hopefully you'll feel like you have a little bit more information to guide you in terms of whether you figuring out which one is the right one to apply for you. And you'll have a chance to ask questions that are specific to your situation, or clarification questions on the grant eligibility or guidelines, any of that. So I hail from Spokane, Washington. That is where I was born and raised. Has spent most of my adult life in the Pacific Northwest, with some time in Rhode Island and California. My background is in public art, and grants are part of that. I've been on both the grant writing and the grant making side. So just to share a little bit about me. And so I'm going to turn it over to Courtney if you want to introduce yourself and just a little bit about yourself. And then Chuck, I'm going to put you in the hot seat and ask you to share some personal details as well, since it's just us. So Courtney, go ahead.
So my name is Courtney Buckner. I am the Arts Program Grants and Operations Specialist. And as Laura said, we've worked together over the last few years to kind of build this up. I have been with the city on and off for about 9 years, 8.5, 9 years at this point. I started as a seasonal temp in events and doing all of the picnics and concerts and things like that, and worked up towards this full-time position. I went to U of O, go Ducks, and majored in English. Oh no, Chuck just frowned at me. Well, I was an English major, so I got into both, but I went for English. So that's why I went to U of O, because the English department there is superb. If I would have gone for science, I probably would have gone to OSU. You're welcome. So I was an English major there. I also kept up with taking music classes. I am a self-taught French horn player. So wind ensemble, things like that are important to me. So it's kind of nice that I get to now use writing and art and love of music and kind of collaborate with my team and everyone in the community, just kind of thinking it from that side of it as well. I am from Salem, a Salamander, so not too far away. Go down and visit my parents on the weekends, which has been nice. And yeah, just enjoying this nice, cool, crispy, sunny weather that we've been having.
Thank you, Courtney.
And I'm done.
Okay, Chuck, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so first of all, I have to say I went to Oregon State, born and raised in Corvallis, no. but I did go to Portland State too. So okay. I got a master's from Portland State and an undergraduate degree from Oregon State. I'm retired. I live in the Cedar Hills area. I had really kind of two careers. I spent 20 some odd years at Meyer and Frank. Worked in kind of systems there at Meyer and Frank, and then spent 20 some odd years at Nike doing roughly the same work as far as implementing systems and helping people adapt from one process to another process. So kind of a transition management, change management, that sort of activity in roughly in just two different settings. I guess my involvement here is my son Eric died as a senior in Sunset High School. and had kind of a love of music and very much enjoyed marching band and that sort of thing. He played the baritone, not the French horn. But we
I love
kind of created
baritone.
yes, there we go. Thank you.
They're so cool. Yeah.
We created a memorial fund in his memory, and we used that then to sponsor events in the community, and that's the community as we define it is kind of the Beaverton area, whatever that turns out to be. So it's sponsoring activities at Sunset High School, and then the engagement with the city has been to sponsor a holiday concert. So we've sponsored or coordinated a Christmas concert in December at St. Matthew Lutheran Church, and the city has helped fund that. We fund that through the Memorial Fund, and then we get additional funds from the city and some other groups to kind of put that together. Tualatin Hills was a sponsor for a while. And that's kind of, I guess, why I'm here is to kind of, it's been well, you guys know more than I, but I mean, it's been an odd couple of years as far as performing arts and that sort of thing. So we got a grant, shoot, I can't remember, a couple of years ago. And that concert just didn't happen because of COVID. So instead of having the concert, we did a compilation of prior concerts and then just kind of put that on the YouTube as a kind of do-it-yourself type of concert. This last year, we actually then did use the funding from Beaverton and put on a live concert that we also put on YouTube. So we had 100 and some odd people, 150 people in the live concert, and we ended up with like 850 views on YouTube, which was kind of amazing for us. We've never done anything similar to that. So it was a good way to get, well, to become more accessible. Accessible for all different kinds of whether people were because of COVID or age or whatever, it just made the music more accessible. So I guess my what I'm looking for in grants is kind of saying, okay, what kinds of things can that make sense in the performing arts arena to partner with the city of Beaverton and then produce, and is it just the December concert? Is there some other opportunity with the Reeser Performing Arts Center? It's kind of created a new space, as well as created some vacancies in spaces that were being used by other groups that are now moving to Reeser. So it's just kind of, well, what are the possibilities? And I guess my intent in coming today was just to kind of learn more about the two different programs. I know that there's the small grant program, which is kind of where we've traditionally fit. And I would see us fitting again, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about the larger grant program as well.
I have so much to share.
We have so many things.
Maybe that's too much, maybe that's too little. But
no, that's great. That's really helpful. And I have to say, Chuck, it's so good to put a face with the name of the grantee. I remember seeing that application before I left the city. So it's just nice to see our grantees coming back, and we do have some changes. So we'll walk you through those tonight, and you feel free to ask questions as we're going through. If you want to just raise your hand, use the raise hand function, or you want to unmute yourself and just chime in. I'm going to let this be a pretty informal conversation, especially since there's so few of us. And I think if you have very specific questions about your particular needs in terms of grants, we can talk about those at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Courtney, go ahead.
Oh, and we're really glad you're here too, Chuck, because I feel like even though there's just, like Laura said, there's so few of us, so many people know you and what your concert is and have seen it around, including other grantees and things, so that you might be asking some of those same questions that they would have asked. So it'll be a nice, open, fluid conversation with somebody who has gotten that grant funding before and what kind of other opportunities there are. So we appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation, and again, interrupt. Feel free at liberty to interrupt me and ask questions as I go along. So just give me a second here and I'll pull it up. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yes, okay, excellent. All right. I don't know why it's not wanting to advance. There we go. Okay. So the first grant that I want to talk about, sorry, I have to move this little toolbar, are grants that you are likely familiar with, Chuck, because we've offered them before. These are what are called our large grants for art organizations and projects. These are only open to 501c3 organizations. Awards are available to organizations offering arts and culture related programs, projects, and events that benefit Beaverton residents and which bring people together to experience and explore art, celebrate cultural diversity and inclusion, spur engagement and stewardship of art, and or educate the community on the value of art. So these awards are up to 5,000. So your request can be no greater than 5,000. And you'll want to refer to the eligibility to determine the appropriate budget level. This is not a matching grant, so that we don't require you to bring an equal amount to the table to be awarded the grant. But we always encourage our grantees or applicants to augment or supplement funding that they receive by other funding sources. If you're requesting the full award amount, your project budget is greater than that amount, you must present a clear fundraising plan in your application and identify your other sources of funding. We do allow crowdfunding and other fundraising through community engagement activities. We encourage it. We love to see that. The timeline for this, so this is open right now and it closes on March 4th. So this is the first of our grants to close, just right around the corner. And then we meet with our grants review committee and we make recommendations for our awardees and award amounts and notify grantees by the end of May. Sorry, you guys. All right. Next are small project grants. This is 10,000, up to 1,000 per applicant. They're intended to provide support for new or unanticipated projects and those with an urgent timeline, especially for emerging artists, BIPOC and LGBTQ artists, students, or organizations new to the grant making process. Projects could include workshops, art classes, and or art activities that serve Beaverton residents. Again, not a matching grant, but we encourage applicants to leverage other funds raised to augment their projects. This has a quarterly submission, but it's a rolling deadline. So we review with our grants committee once per quarter in March, June, September, and December, or until all of our grant funds for this grant type are expended. Applicants will be notified of their funding request status by the end of each of these months.
So is the deadline then the end of March, the end of June, or is it like the 1st of March?
There is no hard deadline for this. It's just a rolling deadline, knowing that we're going to be reviewing them at the end of March. That's okay, when you would, yeah. So if you
somebody wanted to apply for a March decision, in theory, they would submit it sometime in the month of March prior to the end. I mean, probably the middle, by the 15th of March would make sense.
Yeah, so we'll just, to give you an idea, we have 2 grant types that are, that have a finite period that they're open and then they close and then they don't open again until same time next year. And those both close by March 25th. And so then we'll be reviewing applications right after that and including any of the small project grant applications that come in during this time frame.
Okay, so it's the same group doing the review.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Yeah, and Chuck, you'll probably be familiar with some of that because they used to be the community grants by themselves that were up to 2,000, but we've raised the funding for each of those. So they just look a little different.
Our next grant type, which we had offered before, but got rid of for a period of time, and now we're bringing it back. It's called Art Lives Here, community grants. And these, so this is grant funding to support arts related projects in Beaverton. Projects must serve residents of Beaverton. Now that's really true for all of our grants. You really just need to be able, you don't have to be in Beaverton proper, but you have to be able to demonstrate the public benefit to Beaverton residents. Those projects that provide opportunities to historically marginalized and or underserved community members are most likely to be funded. Project duration may vary and could be a one-time or a recurring event, a performance, an art class, a program, placemaking initiative, and more. Like a mural project, for instance, would be a great project for this grant type. So there's a lot of different options. This is a pretty open grant type. However, it is really intended, the genesis of this grant type was really trying to get more art activities in the neighborhoods. So these sort of, this groundswell in the neighborhoods of events and placemaking is what we wanted to encourage with this grant type. Funding requests may be up to $5,000 per project, not a matching grant again. If like the large grant, if you're applying for the full award amount and the total project budget falls over that amount, there has to be a clear fundraising plan. And any other secure sources of fundraising identified. We encourage further crowdfunding and fundraising through community engagement activities. And if the organization is not a 501c3, the applicant must have a fiscal agent. So that's important to note for this grant type. This grant is the second to close. So this closes on March 25th, 5 p.m. Award notification is by May 31st, 2022. And for this one, for our large grants and for our community grants, all of those programs need to take place between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2023. And that is our fiscal year. It's not a kind of an arbitrary, strange calendar year. It's just that how we follow our fiscal year. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the criteria because there are three grant types that have the same evaluation criteria. So I just wanted to go over those briefly. So we have our grant committee score on a 100-point system. We have 5 criteria. Each of those criteria garners 20 points. So our grant committee will give a score from 0 to 20 in those 5 criteria. First criteria is neighborhood participation and community partnerships. So the applicant must clearly define how the project will support, or excuse me, will provide a creative solution for specific issues in the proposed area, demonstrate community support and collaboration, and how the project will create strong partnerships in the neighborhood. Second is creativity, artistic quality, scope, and merit. Proposals should be innovative, well-defined, goal-oriented, original, and either visually or experientially compelling, and draw on community resources and talent. Third is planning, feasibility, and maintenance. Proposals should demonstrate how feasible the project is in terms of timeline, budget, and available resources. Explain how the project will be safely produced, installed, maintained, and removed. Fourth, economic and community vitality and leverage. How well does the project address the objectives of the grant program and catalyze a vision to enhance the vibrancy and economic vitality in a neighborhood? Proposals should include measurement tools or metrics for reporting on the success of the project and addressing challenges or opportunities in the neighborhood. And then lastly, community benefit and social impact. Proposals should demonstrate how the project represents and boasts community identity, heritage, engagement, and a sense of place. Okay, and our last of our 4 grant types is open format, and this is a new grant type that we are introducing this year. This is one of our grants with a rolling deadline, similar to our small grants. This anybody can apply at any time throughout the year, and it will be reviewed quarterly by our grants committee. These are award amounts up to $2,500 that are given to arts and culture practitioners. This grant is intended to provide support for individuals or organizations that have needs not met by other traditional funding programs. We call it open format because we ask that applicants simply tell us what their most emergent and impactful needs are. Funds could be used to support studio space, office, or venue rental, support staff positions, produce a discrete project, hire a consultant to lead a strategic planning effort for an organization. So many options here. The point is we want applicants to tell us what they need, and then we'll consider funding it. And this really came, this grant type came about because I was hearing from a lot of artists that they felt like they were having application fatigue during the pandemic and even pre-pandemic. And they were struggling, and they felt like whatever they needed was kind of like a square peg round hole situation. And they were really not, they were finding themselves like bending what they wanted to do to the guidelines of a specific grant program, instead of having this sort of tailor-made grant, which would allow them to do whatever they needed to do. And so we thought, let's just try as an, a bit of an experiment to see how a very open and low barrier grant would be received, and how effective it would be during this time. Again, this is not a matching grant, so no matching funds required. And then I did mention already the submission deadline. There is none, it's rolling, but we will review these applications quarterly. So it is important for anybody who is applying for these grants, if it is for a specific event, it's very important that they indicate when that event is, so that if we need to, we can expedite the review. We do look at that when our applications come in. We'll look to see, if there's an event date. And if there is, there's other ways we can have our grants committee review so that we can consider it. And I mean, we really want to try to be as responsive as possible to get money into the hands of our arts and culture practitioners. So this one has a little bit different criteria. It's mostly the same, I would say, but I'm just going to go over because it is a new grant type, and we were thinking about things in a little bit of a different, or with a little bit of a different lens. So the first one is same point system, 100 points total, 5 criteria. First one is clear vision for proposed activities. Is there a clear articulation of concept, activities, artist involvement, and scope of work or services? Creativity, artistic quality, scope, and merit. Are the proposed activities innovative, well-defined, goal-oriented, original, and either visually or experientially compelling, and or draw on community resources and talent? 3, planning and feasibility. Do the proposed activities demonstrate feasibility in terms of timeline, budget, and available resources? Public benefit. How do the proposed activities benefit, involve, or serve the arts and culture sector and City of Beaverton residents, including arts and cultural practitioners? Do the proposed activities address the goals of the Beaverton Arts Program? And then 5th, arts and culture resiliency. How do the proposed activities respond to current and or unmet needs that contribute to the resiliency and well-being of arts and cultural practitioners? Okay, so now I'm gonna just give a few examples of some of our grant recipients for these grant types. The one exception we won't have to show for is the open format, since it is a new grant type. The first one that you're seeing here is a recipient of the Art Lives Here community grants. This was awarded to Adapt Dance, that's the organization, and it was for a event that had historically been held in Portland, and they really had interest in coming to Beaverton and offering this event in Beaverton. The Dance Jam highlighted and celebrated our local dance community by bridging the gap between dancers and Beaverton residents. Dance Jam included demos, workshops, dance battles, and other performances, creating a lively, free community event in Central Beaverton. And it really was a successful event, and had a really robust attendance because they were strategic in when they offered it and where they offered it. So this was held in the park that is next to the farmers market, if I remember correctly. So kind of piggybacking off of that built-in attendance of the farmers market, it really brought a big crowd out for this event. And I think that it's not always the case, but I think we do like to see visibility, reach, impact with as many people as possible. So I think just that investment, person to person, like, we just want to see that it is having an impact for Beavertonians at large. So this is one of our large grant recipients. The organization is called the Immigrant Story, and this was for the Immigrant Story live storytelling. This award amount was $2,000, and so you can see there, this is not, this award was not at that full $5,000 award amount, which is probably just simply because that's what they requested. We do have applicants that won't necessarily request the full grant award. They will only request what they have need for. The Immigrant Story presented elements of cultural diversity, social equity, and inclusivity through the engagement of arts, culture, and creativity during Beaverton Welcoming Week, by sharing authentic life stories from and by immigrants and refugees who have made Beaverton their home. Each storyteller was professionally coached to deliver a compelling story. And the Immigrant Stories events help foster empathy for immigrants of color through music and storytelling, and help to build a healthier, happier, and more connected community. And they have been a repeat grantee, always for different programs, but one of our success stories, I would say. They have really amazing, an amazing mission and outstanding events, including 2 coming up this year. One is going to be held at the Reeser, and the other one at a location that's yet to be announced, but there will be two events that we will be supporting. So this is an example of our small grant recipient. This was awarded to Curvy Chic Closet, not an organization, not a 501c3 organization, to the best of my knowledge. I don't remember, Courtney, do you know? I don't think so. I think that they were not.
I don't think they were, no.
Yeah. So this award amount was very modest. This is a $500 award amount. Curvy Chic Closet, their mission really is about empowering plus size individuals in the world of fashion. It represents plus size women and men who have been disincluded from traditional shows. And the show is the largest plus size fashion show on the West Coast. And this was for a one-time event. So but it was a really successful event, and they came back with a great final report, and gave us a lot of narrative and storytelling about this event and its impact. Okay, so how to apply? I think that Courtney, I think there's somebody in the waiting room. If you could just allow them in, that would be lovely. So how to apply? The application process, and Chuck, you've likely been through this before, but we accept all of our applications via an online application platform called Submittable. So this is the website this is the link where you can go to apply for all 4 of our grants. So you'll hit kind of a landing page, and you'll see it's a catch-all for all of our arts program opportunities, and those grants will be called out by their grant name on that landing page. So that you would just click on the one that you want to either learn more about or apply for. You will need to create a Submittable account, which is free. There is no charge to create a Submittable account. You probably are wondering a little bit about how grants are reviewed. I mentioned a little bit about this, but we have a grant committee, a review committee that's comprised of staff and then arts commissioners that sit on a grants and diversity, equity, inclusion subcommittee. So those members of the BAC help make the recommendations for who we award grants to and award amounts. Let's see, awards are based on the grant panel's recommendations, and grant applicants can anticipate notification of grant award status in May. So, and that's really just for those two finite grants that open and close. The others are reviewed year round, like I said, but quarterly. Let's see, notification and information on award status can only be given after the grants process is complete. So if we have applications pending and we have not had the grant review committee review them, we can't give notification at all to our applicants, but we can let them know where we're at in the process. If you need, if you have questions about our grant guidelines or the application process, you can contact either Courtney or myself at the Beaverton Arts Program. And we have a general program email that's listed right there. We all look at that email. So if you have questions, you can certainly use that email. And I will also leave my personal email in the chat once I'm done talking. But I would say, like, especially as you're crafting your application and creating your narrative, you may, we are completely open to giving opinions on, you know, are you hitting the mark? Are you, what you should work on potentially a little bit more? Like if there's information that you're missing, we definitely want to see you have a successful application. So if you do have questions that arise during your application, make sure to reach out to us. We are here to help. Our goal is to, and I will just say that COVID has been an interesting time. In a surprising way, we have seen a decline in number of applications. And I think I can partly attribute that to the fatigue that we're experiencing. And also, I think, you know, honestly, the word's just not getting out in the way that it used to. And I think a lot of that is the way that we connect as humans and talk about opportunities. And we've seen it across the city in all of our funding programs. So I think my point in saying that is that I really want to see, if we have a budget for grants, I want to see every single cent of that money expended every year on grants, if at all possible. So that's why we really do want our applicants to be successful and get that money out into the community. Okay, that's it for my presentation. And I apologize, we have someone who joined us a little bit late. Hi, may I call you Joseph?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's my name.
Okay, hi Joseph. I'm Laura Becker. I'm the arts program manager. We've got Courtney Buckner here too, who also works in the grants program. And just so you're aware, we did record this, so all is not lost. You will be able to go back and review the presentation after the meeting. But I'm just going to open it up for questions that either of you may have. I don't know how much time you've spent with the grant guidelines, but we're just here to answer any questions that have come up for you.
So two questions, if I can.
Yep.
So you had a slide that showed the scoring up for 100 for the 3 grant, and I guess the question is that same grid used for all the grants except for the newest one, the
Open format.
The open format?
Correct.
Okay.
That same matrix with all of those criteria and the scoring points. Yep.
Okay. And then just to go to the small grant, just to kind of, so that the purpose of the small grant, the way that, I'm sorry, I think you read it, and the way I is really on unanticipated new things. It isn't really, so for example, for me, if I'm trying to fund something that's happened in the past, the small grant approach really isn't the right approach, because that's not really the intent of that program. Is that it's really intended for, hey, somebody just not thought of something, but a new situation came up. They just need a little to make it happen, and this grant is the mechanism to do that. Is that a fair statement?
So I think my response to that would be both yes and no. And this
Okay.
this grant type is really intended to support those that are really new to grant writing,
Okay.
who don't have a fiscal agent or a 501c3 status,
Okay.
who may be like in a community group or an individual who's trying to produce a project. Someone who doesn't have a long history of being funded, who is underrepresented.
Okay.
And so, you know, that's what this is intended to support. However, this is always meant to be more of a responsive, like, did something arise? So for instance, like we may have had, we had, when we were first encountering COVID, we had our relief grants, but this would have been a great grant to, like, if you wanted to do, for instance, like a virtual program, and that was a responsive program, this would have been a great grant type to apply for. So I would say, you know, I know a little bit about your situation, and you know, I think based on the history of funding, and I do think that there might be other grant types that would be better.
Okay. Okay.
Just depending on what you're trying to do. So we can talk more about that.
No, that's fair. I mean, it's I guess the other question was that I know a lot of the intent of the program is to reach underserved communities, BIPOC populations, et cetera. But it's my difficulty is the channel to actually reach those communities and those populations. I mean, I guess, so we've advertised in the Valley Times and, you know, put up flyers in the library and, you know, things like that. But do you have recommendations of ways to communicate more specifically to underserved communities or communities of color that live in the Beaverton area?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. And I don't know. It's a good question. It's a great question. I wish there was kind of a simple solution and a kind of one-stop shopping for that. And there's not. I think that we can help in the way that we promote your event.
I guess all I was trying, I mean, to me, it's kind of like, okay, I need to kind of try and figure out, are there local organizations to partner with or communicate with to share information that could help publicize it? And I just am not sure quite who those are, and can continue to work with the city on maybe identifying them. That would be. Well,
and one thing, I mean, if you're thinking about artists and supporting artists, musicians, you may consider BIPOC, LGBTQIA plus artists in terms of your performers.
Right.
I mean, I think that's it doesn't have to be like a mass audience. I mean, I think the impact is important. Certainly, you know, we can help promote a call to artists if you want to really open it up, instead of, you know, kind of going to your Rolodex of the folks that you know, maybe creating a bit more of an open and inclusive call. Like, we can definitely help with that. That might be something that you would consider. Or choosing an event that really does just specifically focus on BIPOC or LGBTQIA performers. That would be great. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways to come at it. And we're here to help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Chuck, you had mentioned too, maybe other ways of doing the performances that you usually do as well. So whether it's a winter concert and also a separate concert that kind of encapsulates what Laura is talking about too. So even with some of those grant fundings, because I feel like you've probably gotten the community grant in the past. Am I right? Yes, the community grant used to be that $2,000. So now that it is up to $5,000, maybe there's ways for you to be able to use it in other ways to do multiple of those, or a larger one at a different time, or something just to be thinking about that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank
I
you.
mean, the
Good
other
idea.
thing too is venue, the choice of venue,
Mhm.
where you choose to do your events. You might
Mhm.
think of kind of new or unusual or underrepresented venues to host your events. We always do like to see in a grant application, if it is for a specific event, that you have some sense of venue. That is something that I would strongly suggest, so that you have a sense of their venue rental fees. If you can actually have space there, like if they can accommodate you schedule wise, those things. It's important to do a little bit of research and development before you apply for the grant, because I think our grant committee takes it more seriously if you have ironed out some of those details.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, I guess you answered my question. So it sounded like it could be more than just one event. It's really like, in fact, encouraged. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you have I mean, I think if you all want to share a little bit about what you're wanting to write a grant for, we might be able to have a conversation about, which grant is appropriate, anything you want to pay, particular attention to, if you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a staff member with the Filipino Bayanihan Center. It's
Okay.
in Southeast, but I currently live in Beaverton. So
Okay.
as a Filipino American, we actually recognize that there's the most Filipinos here in Beaverton compared to any other area in Oregon.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
something we're trying to explore more.
Mhm.
And yeah, get to know the community here. So still figuring out what kind of project that could look like, but we're thinking some sort of potentially some sort of outdoor event, kind of like what they've hosted in Seattle or
Mhm.
Washington area, where they hold like a cultural event where lots of Filipinos can come through and like share like a market or like performances and whatnot. So
Mhm.
that's just something that we're still exploring, but yeah, just wanted to get more information on this grant.
Yeah, great. So I might say that, do you have a 501c3 status? You do, okay. Yeah, so I think either the Art Lives Here community grants or the large grants are going to be the most probably appropriate, especially if you're wanting to do multiple events. You would need a higher level of support to really pull that off. So I mean, honestly, I think that I see it as being a really good match for the Art Lives Here community grants. So, and that one has a little bit, you would have a little bit more time, because the large grants, that deadline is right around the corner. It's on the 4th of March, but the Art Lives Here community grants, that one closes on March 25th. So it would allow you a little bit more time to kind of get your proposal prepped. That's exciting. That's really great. We love when people, come to Beaverton. It's, I mean, I live here. I'm definitely biased. I love this place, but it's just really great to see more people taking interest in Beaverton for a whole lot of reasons.
Agreed. Yeah.
Mhm.
When does that event normally take place when you've done it elsewhere?
Oh no, we've never done this before.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah.
The Bayanihan Center
Mhm.
is actually
Mhm.
very new. It just launched
Yeah.
last year in response to COVID. So
Mhm.
it was like,
Very cool. Mhm.
yeah, it was a way to help out Filipinos that
Mhm.
have been affected by COVID.
Mhm.
So, or like one of the projects we're doing is actually like getting people to be able to cover like their expenses and bills while they're
Mm.
quarantined during the last peak.
Yeah.
But one of the big things we're also trying to do is how to
Mhm.
build that community aspect. So
Mhm.
we know that there was one in Washington that used to
Yeah.
happen before. So trying to explore different cultural things that can get the community aspect.
Yeah, thinking about that as well. If it's something that launched and was quite successful here, it might be something to look ahead in the next years of something that happens maybe during the welcoming week and partnering with cultural inclusion program. They do, I mean, it's a whole week in September where they do welcoming events, activities, things like that. They also have separate grant funding, so it would be a good way to kind of piggyback off of both of those grants and be able to get support from both of the programs. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Courtney. I just wanted to say that if we do award a grant, we only award one grant per applicant per year. So if you get a small grant, you can't also get a large grant or Art Lives Here grant. You get one. So I would say, like, really choose wisely about which one you want to go after. And you can supplement funding from another city grant type. It is not like a mutually exclusive thing where if you get a grant from us, you can't get one from cultural inclusion. Like, they definitely can dovetail really nicely. And we are trying to do a better job. And I think, you know, I'd be the first one to admit that sometimes in government, we get a little bit siloed and we don't know exactly what, you know, sometimes there's a disconnect. And I think we're really trying to close that gap so that we can make sure to think about our grantees in a more holistic sense, and how they are connected to the greater work of the city. So I would encourage it for sure. And the other thing that I wanted to say about just in hearing your comments, you could do several events and not have all of those events be in Beaverton. So for instance, like if you were doing a 3-day event and you were going to have one day in Portland and one day in Beaverton and one day in Hillsborough, that is totally okay. And I think you just have to really demonstrate what that impact is in Beaverton and keep that kind of in line with the funding request. So if that total event budget is $5,000, you wouldn't want to ask necessarily for $5,000 to support the whole event because only a third of it would be in Beaverton. So it just depends on the amount of the budget. And so like if you had a budget that was $25,000 for three different events, 5,000 would make a lot of sense. So just think about that in writing your narrative and know that it's not an absolute that everything has to happen in Beaverton proper.
Okay, that's really clarifying. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. Anyone else? I mean, there's two of you.
Yeah, but I'm looking around trying to find the other person.
Yeah. Well, certainly you can let us know if you have questions as you move through the application process. And if you even wanted to just bounce some ideas off of us before you get too deep in that, I'm happy to help. And I think, I mean, are you familiar with the other granting organizations or agencies in the area that you can? Okay. So there are quite a few, honestly, and probably I wouldn't be able to give you an exhaustive list off the cuff, but there is the Hillsborough Arts and Culture Council. They do grants. The Regional Arts and Culture Council also has a grant, quite a large granting program. And those are the two off the top that I know would be appropriate. There's also all kinds of foundations that you can apply for funding through. It just really depends on what you're trying to do with the Oregon Arts Commission. There's a Washington County Cultural Coalition. There are, quite a few. So those are the ones that are most relevant if you're doing programming over here on the west side. I know, I wonder if we can put some links up there.
Yeah, let me work on grabbing some of those. I
Okay.
typed them into the little chat.
Great. We just had, gosh, I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. It was probably about a month and a half ago. Washington County, there's a few organizations over here on the west side, City of Hillsborough, City of Beaverton, and Tualatin Valley Greats. We run a workshop series called Creative Impact, and one of those workshops is it's called the Washington County Grant Panel, and it pulls together arts and culture funders from both the public and the private sector, and has a moderated panel. And those are always really great to understand, from a funder's perspective, what they're really looking for, because it's different. It's so different, and I think it's very mission driven, especially with the foundations. They're very specific in what they'd like to support, and their process looks different. You have to do a letter of inquiry as opposed to an application. But that's a great way to learn more, and I anticipate that we'll be doing that every year, regardless of whether we continue the Creative Impact Workshop Series. I think the Washington County Grants Panel will continue. All right, well.
So did you say you were going to post this video? Is that, so if I have others that want to see it, it'll just be available through the city site? Is that the?
Yes, so we will post it on the city site. We'll post it, and Courtney, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I think we'll post it in two different places. We'll post it in, we'll post it on the grants page on our website, and then we'll probably post it through social media as well.
Yeah, and it will likely take a couple of days just for this video to get auto-populated, and then we've got to swap it to our YouTube channel, and we're going through a website overhaul for the whole city. So when those folks are able to get it up, we will have that YouTube available on there, and like Laura said, it'll go through social media again. But it will be on that grants page along with all of the guidelines, which is probably where you got the link in the first place. So it'll be right there, along with the submittable and everything you should need to hopefully be able to do a successful application. And as Laura said, you can reach out to us if you need help or want to bounce some ideas. I know Chuck, you had mentioned other things with the research and things like that. So there's ways that we can still keep chatting and keeping the conversation going.
I did enter my email, my direct email, in the chat. So if you want to email me and say, hey, can you just email me when that is up? We can give you a notification so you know to let other folks know, as opposed to just expecting that you'll be on high alert looking for it. We'll just email you directly, if that works well for you.
Yeah, so if Joseph, if you want me to reach out and get you yours, if you'd like to share your email with us, that would be awesome. I have Chuck's.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I'll send you
my email. Yeah, you can direct, I think you can direct message Courtney too, if you don't want to share it publicly in the chat.
Which is fine.
Yeah. So I know, Chuck, you're a former grantee, so I'd be curious how you heard about this grant info session. I'd be curious from both of you, actually, to hear how you found out about it.
So for me, it was simply going to the city site. So I went to the grants page. So basically did just kind of a Google search on City of Beaverton grants and landed on that page.
Okay.
And then kind of scrolled through it and found the link and said, oops, I better remember to do this.
Yeah. Well, good, it's working. That's the good news. And Joseph, what about you? How did you hear?
Sorry, my clock.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I was sent the link from a fellow volunteer about grants here in Beaverton, and then I just scrolled through and saw the link. So
okay, great.
I had a call until 5:30, so I was glad I was able to catch some of it.
Yeah, no, I apologize that you missed the presentation. Oh, it looks like we have an extra an extra late arrival. We can go ahead and admit her, Courtney, and then
Okay.
we can follow up with her too.
Okay.
Because I definitely think we're towards the end of our time. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and I would appreciate if you can help us get the word out about grant opportunities. I know that it sometimes is a little bit awkward because people feel like they're in competition for the same resources. But I think that we all benefit by supporting each other. So that's what I mean, that's my philosophy. So I'd love it if you could just help spread the word and direct people our way.
And I guess, Joseph, I would encourage, I mean, what you described as a possibility sounds like something that would be really fun to see here in the city of Beaverton. So I guess I would, just as a person, would hey, encourage you to make that happen, because it just sounds neat. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, definitely something we'll continue to look into.
Great. Well, I wish you all the best in your grant writing. We had done a while back a workshop on grant writing for artists. And I don't know the degree of experience that either of you really have with that, but if you wanted to learn more, we do have a couple copies of a book that was written by the instructor of that course. It's called Grant Writing for Artists. So if you'd like to, you can email us and just request a copy, and I'll be happy to send it to you. It's a book. You hold it in your hands, you read it, it's great. You learn a lot. I think it's really like there's a grant writing in the arts is it's a special animal, and I think that it is a really helpful guide, and you don't have to digest it all in one sitting, but it is definitely helpful. And Gigi is the name of the woman who taught that class. She's also really open to people reaching out to her directly as well, and answering questions. So yeah, I would say let us know if you'd like a copy, or if you feel completely comfortable, you're just going to dive right in and you have questions, send them our way as well.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we'll
Well, thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing your applications.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good
You're
night.
welcome.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good night.
Good night.